that we will be recording. So there will be some things that you.
Sorry to interrupt, Bruce. The microphone's a bit wonky. Can someone sort that out?
Thanks,
My
Tyler.
apologies.
It wasn't on. It's on now.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Bruce, start again. Go.
Thanks, everyone. So we're here to talk about the community housing activity management plan. I'll do a brief presentation. First of all, just setting a bit of the scene about the housing ecosystem, particularly for new councillors. Then I'll do a brief summary of the activity plan, but I propose to leave as much time as possible for questions and answers. Recognising that we are recording this, there may be some specific things that you want to ask, for instance, around matters of a relationship with OCHT, etc., that I'll just need to think about whether it's best to answer in public or whether we hold that for later, but we'll look at that. Before we get underway, I want to introduce to you the housing team, which is Lisa. So Lisa is responsible for all of our liaison with OCHT and other housing providers, and does the work. I'm just here to really assist her in getting things done. So where we actually work in the housing continuum is in the section that's covered by the red oblong on the screen in front of you. So it's the part of assisted housing between supported and assisted rentals, which is our traditional social housing, and up to assisted ownership. So we've made that move since 2021 from that the round circle area, the supported assisted rental, to take into that broader oblong area in response to the fact that housing is becoming less affordable, even though in Christchurch it is relatively affordable compared to the rest of the country. It is less affordable, becoming less affordable, and particularly for some of the market rents at the lower levels, and for those who are renting but can't or don't qualify for social housing and government subsidies, and also often for those wanting to get into their first home who might be able to afford rents but can't afford to put together a deposit on a house. So from the last review of the community housing strategy, you asked us to start to expand our thinking to move into that section, the assisted rental and assisted ownership. So just what we do, sorry, not on a PowerPoint, try to do a bit of a diagram to show how our system works for the majority of our housing that we own. So council owns a significant amount of housing, 1,866 homes that we lease to OCHT. We still retain the ownership of them, we pay the rates and the insurance, but pretty much everything else is undertaken by OCHT. So the focus of what we're talking about today is our role as owner, and it's not into things like tenancy management, it's not into maintenance or renewals or construction, because OCHT does all of that work. Some of it on our behalf, such as the renewals and the tenancy management and maintenance, and some for themselves, which is the construction and development space. OCHT gets its funds that it pays us a rent from the rent from its tenants, and then also from government subsidies. So there's essentially two types of tenants. One we have what we call assisted rental tenants. So they are ones that used to be council's tenants, and generally we're aiming for about between 60 and 80% of market rent that they pay. And they do not get subsidies direct, or OCHT does not get subsidies directly from the government from them, although the individual tenants may get some subsidies through the government. And about 50% of our portfolio is assisted rentals. The other 50% is tenants that pay an income-related rent. Essentially, those tenants pay 25% of their income as rent, and OCHT then receive a subsidy, the income related rent subsidy or IRS, from the government that tops it up to 100% of market. So those tenancies are more sustainable for us because we're getting a greater revenue off them. It meets the costs of it. It's actually better off for the tenants because they pay less in rent as well. But you might, see from time to time in the media, particularly talking about a two-class social housing system. That's where that's coming from. Some are paying 25% of their income, or others might be paying 60 to 70% of market rental. All right, so now turning to our activity management plan and our direction through the LTP. We're not proposing any major changes in direction or targets through that, primarily because we've got restricted resources. The community housing activity is funded just from the rent we collect from OCHT, and the majority of that goes all back through rates, insurance, a little bit in paying Lisa's salary and the overheads associated with that, and then maintenance and renewals. And so there are insufficient resources. There are no spare resources to undertake new initiatives, including initiatives to meet some of your strategic priorities. So our strategy over the next 10 years is to continue focus expenditure on addressing required maintenance and renewals. We're going quite aggressively with that until at least 2027, and then we expect to be able to take the foot off the accelerator a bit and start to accumulate some surpluses for future renewals. The reason why we've adopted that strategy is that we've inherited effectively from the past a lot of deferred maintenance and poor quality outcomes. And we've been, with additional revenue coming into the system since 2016, we've been trying to target that revenue to address those issues. We work on a basis of if you can think in your minds of a triangle, one corner is quality, one corner is quantity, and one corner is affordability. And we work on a fixed amount of money inside that. So if we want to increase any one of those, or move any one of those corners, something has to give at the others. So in the past, council has focused on affordability and quantity, which has meant that quality has decreased. For the moment, until 2027, we want to focus on that quality, which means we are maintaining affordability as it is, but we can't do any increase in quantity, so we can't increase the amount of stock that we have. The other main strategy we're looking at is just to accumulate and maintain sufficient reserves in the Housing Development Fund, which is where all the funds are held, so that we've got a small buffer to deal with unexpected events. So currently the Housing Development Fund has 991,000 in it. We think we need to have about 1.8 to 2 million in that fund to deal with unexpected events. And as an example, our current insurance deductible is 250,000 per event. Last year we had 4 fires, so that's 4 events. We're in trouble if we have that amount again. That's why we're working to build up that buffer to be able to better cope with these events.
Pause for a second until we get the presentation up. It seems to have got lost.
Sure. The presentation is just the pages from the activity management plan. So I'm not reading that verbatim. I'm just trying to summarise it. So hopefully you can concentrate on my words rather than looking at the screen.
Yeah, it's just we've got a recording, which shows the presentation on the screen.
Yeah.
So
so in the light of that, we'll wait and get it
ideal to have it up. Okay.
Can you chuck in for a question at the end, Pauline? I think the audio's gone now.
Housing. So that we consider that a better way than just us holding on and straight renewal. As part of that, and this needs some further work to be done, and it will ultimately sit outside this activity plan in the corporate finance plan, we were looking at making the case for another $50 million financing facility to be made available to community housing providers, particularly OCHT, for redevelopment purposes. So we've got an existing just over $55 million facility that has been put in place whereby the OCHT borrows from us. They borrow at 20 basis points above our cost of borrowing, which is significantly lower than what they can get either from the philanthropic market or from the commercial market. But we only lend it to them on the basis that they have supply contracts with the government that guarantee a revenue stream. And those contracts have generally been 25 years and at 135% of market rental. So out of that, those contracts generate enough income to cover all the costs, the cost of capital, cost of construction, maintenance costs and operating costs over the life of the buildings. They also have very good guarantees from the government that in the case of policy change that they will be continued or that the cash will be paid out. So if we can get access, or OCHT can get access to those, they are a very low risk funding mechanism, and it's a low risk lending from council. In the past, we've been restricted on how much we can on-lend, as much by our own ceiling, debt ceiling that we have, and the amount of money of debt ability that we keep for ourselves. We've been working hard with our GFA on this question, and they've indicated they would be happy that this debt sits off our books in the future, so it doesn't affect your headroom. And the reason for that is the nature of OCHT's status, and also the value of those contracts with government. So we will do some more work on that. But it does come to one of the key risks that we face in this space, which is that we're starting to see it's getting harder and harder to access government funding for new social housing in Christchurch, that they are targeting other areas, particularly regional areas, and we might find it more difficult in the future to get those supply contracts. So we'll continue to work with OCHT on that and present proposals as we go through this LTP process. Other risks, insurance costs. They're really becoming unaffordable. For this current financial year, we initially budgeted $1.7 million. We've ended up paying $2.4 million as a premium, which is a significant amount of our budget. Additionally, the deductible for each claim has gone up, and we are now paying $250,000 per claim. And given that the most recent fire, the repair costs were $254,000, it's not much point in making claims. The reason of that is very specific to our portfolio, and that we have seen quite a number of fires coming through from that, and higher than expected amount of claims. So that's a risk that we face. Another risk that we face is regulation change. Well, and this is a double-edged sword. There is a pressure to improve the quality of rental stock. We've seen it in the last two terms of the government, which has led to the healthy homes regulations and increasing the amount of insulation, heating, draft proofing, waterproofing on houses. That exercise for us cost about $14 million. There is ongoing pressure to lift standards, and that will add cost if we do that. And it's cost that we can't necessarily reclaim back through rent. So that is a risk that is out there. And even if there's not specific increases in standards, but there is an increase in the monitoring and reporting on that. That is a cost that we will be challenged by as well. So I think I'll stop at that point, and subject to the chair's agreement, open it up for
Some questions. Thanks, Bruce. So we've got Sarah and then Tyler on Zoom.
No, I did mine earlier.
Oh, you did that was yours. You snuck it in. And Tyler? Sam. Microphone, Tyler.
Kia ora. Can you hear me all right?
Yep, good.
Cool. Just a quick question. It's just pretty low level question, Bruce. I've had quite a few complaints regarding the quality of the homes, particularly that we own in the OCHT area. Do we go through the normal channels to raise that, or is there anything else that we need to do to get that to OCHT?
Yep. So specific question there, go through Office of the Chief Executive. They have a process for passing those on to OCHT.
Sure.
In terms of the more general picture, and accepting that there will be occasionally specific issues, but the more general picture is that since 2015, satisfaction with condition of units has significantly increased from around 51% in 2015. We're up to 81%, and we've seen improvement in condition, with current condition ratings being good for externals and then fair to good for internals. So there's still some work to do, but we're making good progress. But that doesn't mean there's not specific issues that will need to be addressed from time to time.
It's phenomenal.
That's a great answer, Bruce. Appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Tyler. Sam?
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. I'm just trying to understand the difference between the house. So we own the housing as a council, but then there's a portion that's leased to OCHT. Is that correct? Or is everything leased to OCHT?
It's all leased. The majority of it, well over 90, probably over 98%, is leased to OCHT. Then we have just a few smaller ones to YWCA, Home and Family, and
Lancewood.
and one other. So there's a handful of other properties leased to other agencies.
So when we talk about like insurance and stuff like that, who bears the cost of that, OCHT or us?
Us. Yeah.
Why is that?
So that's how we set it up when we set the lease up. It is something that we are looking at and seeing whether we can further shift those costs, but they just come from the rent that is generated anyway from OCHT. So that's the only source of revenue that we have is through OCHT.
Yeah.
And I think that our insurance costs were competitive with theirs. Yeah.
Okay. So then I guess just trying to understand it from your point of view, the current structure of how housing sits within council and OCHT, is that at sort of the optimal sort of balance, or are we? I mean, I guess what I'm hoping to see as we come through the LTP is if there are tangible things you think we should be changing that actually they're addressed during this. So, I mean, are we saying everything's good as it is, or I'm just not getting a sense of that from what we've had?
So since we made the structural changes in 2016, there's been a significant improvement, as we just talked about, in things like the quality of the stock, that we've increased the revenue going in because of attracting the IRS. So on current arrangements, we're doing really well. I've put in the LTP, and I think I've put it out about another 4 years, when we're getting close to the next lease review, that we should review those arrangements again and see if there's further changes that might be necessary at that point. But right at this stage, I think we've got the best situation, particularly if we can continue to put pressure on the government to put funding into the system, and that ongoing then transfer to particularly OCHT for redevelopment, will mean we'll have a reducing portfolio, but it means we're getting new, warm, dry, fit for purpose and increased housing out of that.
Okay. Maybe it's something to feedback. I appreciate that. That's brilliant. What I'm kind of keen to see coming through the activity plans is if there are changes that the organisation thinks should be made, it'd be really nice to get them flagged now, so we can kind of begin to understand a bit of that thinking. It's like they've been really good presentations, so it's not a criticism in the slightest, but it's probably two today where I was hoping to see a bit more of that. So,
right, okay. Noting that nothing can change for 4 years, but that's still within the LTP period.
Completely, yeah. It's just if there's stuff that we can help with to make it better now, I'm kind of keen to see that. Or if there are options or changes we can make as we consider the LTP, I'd be keen to.
Yeah. And
yeah, I know.
Yes,
that discussion, there's certainly things that we can look at, but it's also that we would not be necessarily ranging the more political aspects of that, because there's certainly some clear matters in this portfolio that you'd say would relate to political matters. For instance, we've been quite clear, and officers will stick to this, that it's a rates neutral service. Changing that really needs to be raised from the politicians rather than from officers in those circumstances.
Yes.
I don't think that's
I
what
guess
Sam's doing.
no. No, I'm not. Don't worry. I'm not. You know me better than that, Bruce. So I'm not encouraging.
No, that's all right.
I guess what I'm wanting to say, like, and I'm sure Dawn's going to say something because I can see she's
Yeah.
ready to go. Is when we get this kind of interaction with you guys who know it inside out, where I'm keen to hear sort of firsthand what stuff can change or options we can have that make a bit of a difference or that we can consider as part of the LTP. So it's Dawn looks like she's talking.
Look, I think also we have started with 2 plans which have got a lesser degree of change. So there are other plans coming through which have very explicit changes recommended. So this is a little bit of a soft intro. And there are opportunities, as you are doing, to ask those questions and to challenge, okay, is that the right balance to be struck? So I'll pass over to Dawn.
No, I think you've got that request, Bruce, so that's fine. Yeah, well, Dawn and then Tyler.
So just to add to that and recognising the question that Sam McDonald has asked, fundamentally, I think some of the issues around restrictions of geography are definitely ones that we should be considering in the future related to the lease, because that also then relates to how we earn extra income even in a wider geography, which then also benefits the bottom line from the council's perspective. It's something that we should be seriously considering. It also then relates to how we continue to develop through our urban development work with ourselves and with Christchurch NZ, and utilising OCHT in the mixed-use developments that come forward in the coming years. So those are the sorts of things that I think we should be expecting to see coming through in the middle years of the LTP, and could be reflected a little bit wider as we go through these conversations, remembering these are only the first cuts and they will be enhanced and changed over the next few weeks and months. Hope that helps.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'd rather you didn't use the word cuts. Okay.
Sorry, can I just also add to that? So the first few mixed-use developments that we are looking at will come through my other activity plan. They're more on surplus council land rather than on housing land. So it's an artificial distinction, but we just try and keep this plan in place because of the specific funding stream. And there's no rates go into this, so keep that separate from more activities where there's rates funding in it.
Right, thanks, Bruce. Tyler?
No, my hand was unfortunately still up. My bad.
Oh, that's okay. That's great. So that's the end of the questions.
I was told to remind Jake that he had some questions to ask. So from Good, all right. You can answer to Councillor Moore on my behalf then. I've done my job.
You can put them through that link we're going to get shortly. So is that the end of your presentation?
Yep.
Very high quality, thank you. Appreciate it. So